Welcome to the Divine Names Mystery Ministry. In this video, we will be going over Article 7 and Question 13 in the Prima Pars of St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica. Question 13 has to do with the names applied to God, or the names we apply to God. Article 7 asks whether names which imply relation to creatures are predicated of God temporally. Objection 1. It seems that names which imply relation to creatures are not predicated of God temporally, for all such names signify the divine substance, as is universally held. Hence also Ambrose says that his name, Lord, is the name of power, which is the divine substance, and Creator signifies the action of God, which is his essence. Now the divine substance is not temporal, but eternal. Therefore, these names are not applied to God temporally, but eternally. Reply to Objection 1. Some relative names are imposed to signify the relative habitudes themselves, as master and servant, father and son, and the like, and these relatives are called predicamental, or secundum esse, but others are imposed to signify the things from which ensue certain habitudes, as the mover and the thing moved, the head and the thing that it has a head, and the like, and these relatives are called transcendental. Thus, there is the same twofold difference in divine names, for some signify the habitude itself to the creature, as Lord, and these do not signify the divine substance directly, but indirectly insofar as they presuppose the divine substance, as dominion presupposes power, which is the divine substance. Others signify the divine essence directly, and consequently the corresponding habitudes as Savior, Creator, and such like, and these signify the action of God, which is his essence. Yet both names are said of God temporarily, so far as they imply a habitude either principally or consequently, but not as signifying the essence either directly or indirectly. Objection 2. Further, that which something applies temporally can be described as made, but for what is white temporally is made white. But to make does not apply to God, therefore nothing can be predicated of God temporally. Reply to Objection 2. As relations applied to God temporally are only in God in our idea, so to become or to be made are applied to God only in idea, with no change in him, as for instance when we say, Lord, thou art become our refuge, or thou hast been our refuge. Okay. Objection 3. Further, if any names are applied to God temporally as implying relations to creatures, the same rule holds good of all things that imply relation to creatures. But some names are spoken of God implying relation of God to creatures from eternity. For from eternity he knew and loved the creature, according to the word, I have loved thee with an everlasting love, as he says in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 3. Therefore also other names implying relation to creatures, such as Lord and Creator, are applied to God from eternity. Thomas's reply to Objection 3. The operation of the intellect and the will is in the operator. Therefore names signifying relations following upon the action of the intellect or will are applied to God from eternity, whereas those following upon the actions proceeding according to our mode of thinking to external effects are applied to God temporally, as Savior, Creator, and the like. Objection 4. Further, names of this kind signify relation. Therefore, that relation must be something in God, or in the creature only. But it cannot be that it is something in the creature only, for in that case God would be called Lord from the opposite relation which is in creatures, and nothing is named from its opposite. Therefore the relation must be something in God also, But nothing temporal can be in God, for he is above time. Therefore, these names are not applied to God temporally. Reply to Objection 4. Relations signified by these names which are applied to God temporally are in God only an idea, but the opposite relations in creatures are real. Nor is it incongruous that God should be denominated from relations really existing in the thing, yet so that the opposite relations in God should also be understood by us at the same time, in the sense that God is spoken of relatively to the creature, inasmuch as the creature is related to him. Thus the philosopher says in his Metaphysics chapter 5 that the object is said to be knowable, relatively because knowledge relates to it. Objection 5. Further, a thing is called relative from relation, for instance, lord from lordship, as white from whiteness. Therefore, if the relation of lordship is not really in God, but only in idea, it follows that God is not really Lord, which is plainly false. Reply to Objection 5. Since God is related to the creature for the reason that the creature is related to him, and since the relation of subjection is real in the creature, it follows that God is Lord not in idea only, but in reality, for he is called Lord according to the manner in which the creature is subject to him. Objection 6. Further, in relative things which are not simultaneous in nature, one can exist without the other, as a thing knowable can exist without the knowledge of it, as the philosopher says. But relative things which are said of God and creatures are not simultaneous in nature. Therefore, a relation can be predicated of God to the creature even without the existence of the creature, and therefore these names, Lord and Creator, are predicated of God from eternity and not temporally. Reply to Objection 6. To know whether relations are simultaneous by nature or otherwise, it is not necessary by nature or otherwise of things to which they belong, but the meaning of the relations themselves. For if one in its idea includes another, and vice versa, then they are simultaneous by nature, as double and half, father and son, and the like. But if one in its idea includes another, and not vice versa, they are not simultaneous by nature. This applies to science and its object, for the object knowable is considered as a potentiality, and the science as a habit or as an act. Hence, the knowable object in its motive signification exists before science, but if the same object is considered an act, then it is simultaneous with science in act, for the object known is nothing as such, unless it is known. Thus, though God is prior to the creature, still because the signification of Lord includes the idea of a servant and vice versa, these two relative terms, Lord and servant, are simultaneous by nature, and hence God was not Lord until he had a creature subject to himself. On the contrary, Augustine says in his De Trinitate that this relative appellation, Lord, is applied to God temporally. I answer that the names which import relation to creatures are applied to God temporally and not from eternity. To see this, we must learn that some have said that relation is not a reality, but only an idea. But this is plainly seen to be false, from the very fact that things themselves have a mutual natural order and habitude. Nevertheless, it is necessary to know that since relation has two extremes, it happens in three ways that a relation is real or logical. Sometimes from both extremes, it is an idea only, as when the mutual order or habitude can only go between things in the apprehension of reason, as when we say a thing the same as itself, say that a thing is the same as itself. For reason apprehending one thing twice regards it as two, thus it apprehends a certain habitude of a thing to itself. and the same applies to relations between being and non-being formed by reason, apprehending non-being as an extreme. The same is true of relations that follow upon an act of reason, as genus and species and the like. Now there are other relations which are realities as regards both extremes, as when, for instance, a habitude exists between two things according to some reality that belongs to both, as is clear of all relations, consequent upon quality, as great and small, double and half, and the like. For quantity exists in both extremes, and the same applies to relations consequent upon action and passion, as motive power and the movable thing, father and son, and the like. Again, sometimes a relation in one extreme may be a reality, while in the other extreme it is an idea only. And this happens whenever two extremes are not of one order, as sense and science refer respectively to sensible things and to intellectual things, which, inasmuch as they are realities existing in nature, are outside the order of sensible and intellectual existence. Therefore, in science and in sense, a real relation exists, because they are ordered either to the knowledge or to the sensible perception of things, whereas the things looked at in themselves are outside this order, and hence in them there is no real relation to science and sense, but only an idea, inasmuch as the intellect apprehends them as terms of the relations of science and sense. Hence, the philosopher says in his Metaphysics chapter 5 that they are called relative, not forasmuch as they are related to other things, but as others are related to them. Likewise, for instance, on the right is not applied to a column, unless it stands as regards an animal on the right side, which relation is not really in the column, but in the animal. Since, therefore, God is outside the whole order of creation, and all creatures are ordered to him, and not conversely, it is manifest that creatures are really related to God himself, whereas in God there is no real relation to creatures, but a relation only an idea, inasmuch as creatures are referred to him. Thus, there is nothing to prevent these names which import relation to the creature from being predicated of God temporally, not by reason of any change in him, but by reason of the change of the creature, as a column is on the right of an animal, without change in itself, but by change in the animal. Okay, so that is Article 7 of Question 13 in the prima pars of St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica. Thank you for watching another video with the Divine Names. In the next video, we will go over Article 8 of Question 13. See you then.